So I'm actually currently partway through doing an analysis of this newest interview that was done with Daniel Martel. However, since it is getting quite late in the day, I've had a busy day and haven't had much time to do any work on my videos. I was going to put that aside and come back to it tomorrow and just have the rest of the evening off. But as you do, started doing the usual browsing thing, came across this article. I think this is hugely significant in this case, and I think it's something that many of us had suspected previously. I know I had made a comment in the past. There were things that to me were definitely a red flag, part of that being them mentioning that the children were so far behind at school, but that coupled with what to me definitely appears to be a cigarette burn on Jack's face made me think that they may well have already been on the radar with child protection. And now we have an article that's just come out which confirms that ethically I do question child protection actually releasing this information. But presumably they have actually got the go-ahead from the Mounties first. So I'm going to read through this article and just share some of my thoughts along the way. So the title is Missing Nova Scotia Children Were Assessed by Child Welfare Agency months before disappearance. Nova Scotia's Child Protection Agency investigated the living conditions of Jack and Lily Sullivan months before their mysterious disappearance in early May, a case file that has been reviewed by the Minister responsible for child welfare. Okay, so since they are referring to it as a case file, and it is actually being reviewed by a Minister for Child Welfare, that to me says that there is actually quite a bit of information in that file. So that says that there may not have been just one visit, one assessment. Potentially that means that there is significant information in that file which could be having some bearing into the disappearance of the children. I mean, at the end of the day, a case file is not going to be reviewed by a minister if all it is that the services went and made a visit at the house this one-off time and nothing came of it. So for them to have a case file that is worthy of review, that is huge. Scott Armstrong, Nova Scotia's Minister of Opportunities and Social Development, confirmed in an interview that the agency had a file on the children prior to their disappearance, but said it would be inappropriate for him to discuss the agency's findings. With Jack and Lily still missing and a police investigation underway, it's not the right time to dissect the agency's prior involvement, Mr. Armstrong said. Honestly, all I can think right now is that there must be some investigative strategy behind this information coming out, because I can't imagine that an actual minister is going to leak information on a huge case like this unless he has the go-ahead from the Mounties. Meaning that there is a reason for this information to come out. It's not about sharing public information, I'll tell you that much. The children's mother, Malaya Brooks Murray, said she had no comment in relation to Child Protective Services' involvement with Lily and Jack, which means that they have at the very least been in contact with her. Mr. Martell has said he had nothing to do with the children's disappearance and has nothing to hide. I'm keeping the story alive and keeping everyone's hopes up, not just my own, Mr. Martell told the Globe in May. He also said Ms. Brooks-Murray had no involvement in the disappearance either. I know Malaya has nothing to do with anything. These are interesting statements, and I'm not aware of actually seeing any interview with him saying this. So there must be maybe an article that was done, or perhaps there is footage that hasn't been released. Child welfare authorities investigate when a report of suspected abuse or neglect is received by the agency. In Nova Scotia, every person has a legal obligation to report concerns of suspected abuse or neglect of a child. The law stipulates that teachers and other childcare workers have an added duty to report. So it seems like Nova Scotia has adopted the same policy that Florida has, and basically every person is legally a mandatory reporter. I would imagine, given the ages of the children, that these reports have been made or originated from their school. We have no idea where those kids are, and we should be focused on helping them and finding them and supporting this family, he said. In other words, don't look here, go back to looking at the investigation. Asked whether a review has been ordered into his agency's prior interaction with the children, he said, "As a minister, I've seen a report. I'll talk to that. I've personally seen the report. I asked for it," he said. "I'm aware of how our department was involved in this." Now, let's be real. If there was nothing significant in that report, then it wouldn't have been brought to the attention of a minister. Can you imagine if every time a child went missing, a minister involved in protective services went, "Okay, well, I'm going to ask protective services if they've got a file on this child and demand to see it." It's not really his job. So to me, this suggests that during the investigation, a question has been raised with regards to how the department was dealing with this case. Maybe there was a red flag that was ignored. But I think it is fair to say that this is definitely a case of where there's smoke, there's fire. They're not going to involve a minister just because the kids are a little bit behind at school. He added, "I think we should be focused more on those kids than we are on looking to blame somebody." Mr. Armstrong said, "There may come a point when the agency's involvement with the children is deserving of more scrutiny. But now, 7 weeks into their disappearance, is not it." Wow. Just wow. This is a loaded statement. We should be focused more on those kids than we are on looking to blame somebody. That to me says there is something in that report which suggests that protective services may have failed those children. Mr. Armstrong said, "There may come a point when the agency's involvement with the children is deserving of more scrutiny, but not now." That's pretty damn clear. that is so clear that there's an issue there. Potentially, we could be looking at another situation where protective services have overlooked something and left the kids in a situation which ultimately ended up with where we're at today. He's not going to be saying there may come a point when the agency's involvement with the children is deserving of more scrutiny if there isn't something there. You would expect instead to be hearing a statement along the lines of, I'm satisfied with the handling of this case by the agency, or something like that. Something that makes it clear that, no, you don't need to look at the agency. They did nothing wrong. There's nothing here to look at with this case. There is no child welfare issue here. He's not denying anything here. He's just saying, right now is not the time to be looking at the failings that may or may not have occurred with regards to these children. That's a conversation we may need to have in the future. Okay, huge shout out to this reporter. Daniel Martel, who was in a common law relationship with the children's mother. Note, they're not saying the stepfather, they're saying he was in a common law relationship and was living with them when they went missing, told the Globe in an interview in May that a social worker with Child Protective Services visited the home several months ago. The visit was prompted by concerns that had been relayed by someone at the children's school and related to their developmental delays, Mr. Martel said. Like I said, for a file to have gone to a minister, there's more in this file than just a query regarding the children's developmental delays. Now, if you watched the interview with Belinda Gray, who is the mother of their biological father, she said that she was shocked by the condition of the house because Malaya wasn't like that. Malaya was a really good mum, and she couldn't understand how Malaya had allowed the house to get in that condition, because she would have kept it clean and tidy for those kids. So straight up, that tells me that part of the investigation from Protective Services would have evolved around the condition that the house was in. But let's be frank, children living in a house that's kind of messy are not going to show developmental delays just because of a messy living environment. Developmental delays are going to come from some kind of complex trauma. For those of you who are not sure what I mean by complex trauma, that is basically your ongoing kind of trauma. You may have regular trauma, so a child might witness something that for them is upsetting and causes a trauma. Just that one incident on its own causes a trauma. Complex trauma, that is where you have repeated events in a child's life. This trauma occurs over a period of time. And that's what's going to cause developmental delays with these children. Living in a messy house is not going to cause complex trauma. There is, without a doubt, far more to this story. I know that members have watched a video that I put out that was members only, that was a more relaxed chat about this case. Then no, I'm not going to make it public, and I apologise for that. But when I am speaking about cases in a more relaxed way, I prefer to keep that amongst members rather than making it public, simply because it is a more of a free-form kind of discussion. So I think members have an idea where I'm headed with this case, my thoughts on this case, and this certainly confirms what I have been hypothesising, or at least supports my hypothesis. So I wouldn't say it confirms it. You would need to have a statement from the Mounties to confirm what I've been saying with members. But I'm just going to reiterate, I haven't gone beyond the home in terms of looking at what occurred with these children. I don't believe that they wandered off into the woods, and I don't believe they were abducted. That's based on statements made by both parents, based on statements made by law enforcement, and just the general direction of this case as we are seeing it. I know there's not a lot of information coming out, but what is coming out is enough to give you a fair idea of where this case is headed. Now, on that note, the pup has lost the plastic lid that he's been throwing around to entertain himself and now wants my attention. So that's probably a really good place for me to end this video. So, thank you for listening. If you are new to my channel, please subscribe. Also, please hit the like button, YouTube loves that. And please leave a comment below. Thank you, and I will catch you in the next one.